The human sat inside a cold metallic room, his hands tied behind him with glowing restraints. Strange humming sounds echoed through the alien hallways outside. He had been captured hours ago, but he still didn't know what his fate would be. The door slid open with a hiss, and several tall alien guards entered, their armor shining under the dim blue light. Between them walked a woman unlike any other. Her skin shimmered with silver shades, her eyes were sharp and glowing with violet light, and every step she took made the guards bow lower. She was no ordinary figure. She was a noblewoman, and her presence demanded attention. The guards pushed the human to his knees. He clenched his jaw but stayed silent, refusing to give them the fear they wanted. The woman stopped in front of him, tilting her head slightly as if studying an unusual creature. For a long moment, she did not speak. Then her lips curved into a small, curious smile. "I have heard," she said slowly, her voice calm but filled with authority, "that humans possess a creature inside them, a creature that grows larger when called upon. Display it for me." The room fell silent. The guards shifted, some snickering under their breath, waiting for the human to react. His brows furrowed as he tried to understand her words. Her request was strange, almost insulting. He could see the glint of amusement in the soldier's eyes, as if this was some kind of cruel game. He remained still. "I don't know what you mean," he answered in a low voice, refusing to show weakness. The noblewoman's expression hardened. "Do not lie. My spies told me of this worm that changes size. I want to see it. Show me now." Her curiosity had turned into a command. The human's chest tightened. He understood now. They had twisted something simple about human biology into a bizarre rumor. To them, he was not a man. He was an exotic animal to be studied. His silence only fueled their laughter. One of the guards stepped closer and struck him across the face with the back of his armored hand. Pain shot through him, but he did not fall. Blood touched his lip, yet he lifted his head high and stared straight into the noblewoman's glowing eyes. Her smile returned. But this time it was sharper, almost dangerous. "You resist," she whispered, circling him like a predator. "Good. I enjoy resistance. But you will not resist for long. You are in my house now, human, and everything inside it obeys me." The human stayed quiet, his mind racing. He could feel their eyes on him, waiting to see if he would break, waiting for him to act like the weak creature they believed him to be. His silence was louder than words, and soon even the guards grew uneasy. The noblewoman stopped behind him, her breath brushing his ear. "Do not make me force it out of you," she warned softly, "because if I do, you will not survive the night." The human clenched his fists behind his back. He thought of Earth, of his people, of how aliens always saw humans as fragile. They believed humans were weak animals to be mocked or controlled. He knew if he gave in to this strange demand, it would only prove them right. But if he resisted, if he could hold out, maybe he could turn this cruel game into something else. The guards started whispering, their voices filled with ridicule. "Maybe the worm is dead," one sneered. "Maybe humans lie about everything," another added. Their laughter grew louder, echoing in the small chamber. The noblewoman raised her hand, and the room fell silent at once. Her authority was absolute. She walked back in front of him and crouched low so her glowing eyes met his. "I will give you one chance, human. Display the creature that grows larger, or I will make you regret your defiance." For a long moment, their eyes locked. The human's heart pounded, but he did not flinch. Instead, he let a faint, defiant smile touch his bruised face. That small gesture, so simple and quiet, made the noblewoman's smile falter. It was not the reaction she expected. She wanted fear, submission, maybe even begging. But instead, she saw defiance shining in his eyes. Something changed in her expression. The sharpness in her gaze softened for a brief second. Fascination replaced her anger, though she quickly hid it behind a mask of cold control. She stood up, her robe flowing behind her, and spoke louder so all could hear. "This human hides his secrets well," she declared. "Perhaps too well. Take him to the Chamber of Trials. If he will not show us his creature, we will see what else he can display when pushed to his limits." The guards grabbed him by the arms and dragged him to his feet. He stumbled, but his legs held strong. As they pulled him toward the door, he glanced back. The noblewoman was still watching him, her eyes gleaming with strange light. It was no longer only curiosity. It was something deeper, something dangerous. As the door closed behind him, the human felt the weight of what was coming. He knew he had just stepped into a game far larger than himself. They wanted to break him, to humiliate him. But he also knew one thing. Every second he resisted, every moment he held his head high, he turned their laughter into doubt. And doubt was a weapon he could use. In the silence of the hallway, as the guards dragged him deeper into the alien stronghold, his mind whispered a promise to himself. He would not give them what they wanted. Not like this. If they wanted to see the strength of a human, they would see it in a way they never expected. He lifted his head and took a deep breath. The trials were coming, and with them, his chance to change everything. The guards dragged the human through a long corridor filled with strange glowing patterns on the walls. The air smelled metallic, heavy, and sharp, almost like blood mixed with smoke. Alien soldiers lined the way, their insect-like helmets hiding any emotion, but their whispers followed him. Some laughed, others muttered in their language, and all looked at him as if he was already defeated. He walked with his head high, even though his wrists were bound and bruised. He knew they wanted him to look broken, but he refused to give them that pleasure. The Chamber of Trials was massive, a circle of black stone with tall alien pillars rising like claws. 100 eyes glowed in the shadows of the balconies above. Alien nobles, attendants, and soldiers gathered to see the humans' humiliation. A strange hum filled the air, coming from floating orbs that shone with pale light, recording every movement for the council. The noblewoman entered last, her silver robe dragging across the floor. Her presence silenced the crowd. She stood at the center and raised her hand. "This human," she declared, her voice sharp and echoing, "is said to carry a hidden creature within. I asked him to display it, and he refused. So now he will be tested. Let us see what truth lies inside a man who calls himself human." The crowd roared with laughter, mocking sounds bouncing around the chamber. The guards forced him to kneel in front of everyone. His jaw tightened, but he stayed silent. He knew if he said one word in anger, they would twist it into weakness. Silence, he realized, was stronger than their insults. A noble with scales running down his arms stepped forward. His eyes glowed green and his voice hissed like a serpent. "Let me test him," he sneered. "I have always wanted to see how much a fragile species can endure before breaking." The silver-skinned noblewoman raised her hand slightly. "Very well," she said with amusement. "But remember, do not kill him. His body belongs to me." Her tone carried both authority and hidden curiosity. The serpent noble circled the human like a predator. Then, with one swift movement, he kicked him hard in the ribs. Pain shot through his side, but the human only gritted his teeth. He would not cry out. The crowd murmured in surprise at his silence. The noble struck again, this time across the face. Blood dripped down his chin, but still, the human lifted his head and stared with calm, steady eyes. That calmness made the serpent noble pause for a moment. Then anger twisted his face. He pulled out a glowing rod, sparking with electricity, and pressed it against the human's chest. The current burned through him like fire. His muscles locked, his breath caught, but he forced himself not to scream. The pain was unbearable, but he thought of Earth, of his people, and of how every second he endured made him more than a victim. His silence became defiance, and the nobles watching could feel it. A murmur ran through the chamber. Some aliens frowned, confused by his strength. Others whispered in disbelief. The serpent noble's frustration grew. He pushed the rod harder, increasing the charge. The human's body shook, his knees buckled, but his eyes never left the noble woman standing above. Her violet gaze did not waver, and for a brief second he thought he saw her lips curve with the faintest trace of interest. Finally, the rod clicked and powered down. The serpent noble hissed in frustration. He should be begging by now. He should be on the floor crying. But the human only smiled weakly through the blood on his lips. "Is that all?" he whispered, voice rough but clear. The crowd erupted in noise, gasps, anger, and even laughter. The serpent noble turned red with rage and lunged again, but the noblewoman raised her hand sharply. "Enough," she commanded, her voice cut through the air like a blade. The serpent noble froze, breathing hard, but obeyed. He stepped back, glaring at the human with pure hate. The noblewoman walked closer, her steps calm and measured. She circled him slowly, her eyes studying his bruises, the blood, and his defiant stare. Then she spoke, her voice carrying across the chamber. "Strange, fragile bones, weak flesh. Yet he resists more than I expected. Perhaps there is something hidden after all. The crowd fell quiet, listening. She leaned closer, her face inches from his, her eyes glowing brighter. Tell me, human, do you resist because of pride, or because your worm is real and you fear what will happen if we all see it? He met her gaze without blinking. I resist because you want me broken, and I will not give you what you want. For a moment, silence swallowed the room. His words were simple, but they carried weight. The aliens had expected screams, fear, begging. Instead, he gave them defiance in plain, steady voice. That truth unsettled them more than weakness ever could. The noblewoman straightened, her expression unreadable. Then she turned to the others. This is no ordinary trial, she said. This human will not be broken by pain alone. Perhaps we must test him differently. Not with rods or chains, but with curiosity itself. Tomorrow, we will hold the second trial. Let him rest tonight. I want him alive. The guards hesitated, surprised by her command, but they obeyed. They pulled the human to his feet and began dragging him out. As he passed through the chamber doors, he heard whispers following him. Some were mocking still, but others carried doubt. A seed had been planted. He knew now that this was not just about survival. It was about showing them something greater, that humans could not be defined by rumors or by their strange idea of weakness. His silence, his endurance, and his refusal had already shaken their certainty. And as long as he kept standing, he had a chance to turn their cruel game into his victory. When the doors closed behind him, he let out a slow breath. His ribs ached, his chest burned from the shocks, but inside he felt stronger. The trials were not over, they were only beginning. And the alien noblewoman's eyes still followed him, curious, dangerous, and strangely drawn to the strength she did not expect. The cell was dark, but not silent. Strange whispers from the alien guards echoed outside the metal bars, their voices carrying mockery and disbelief. The human sat on the cold floor, his back against the wall, breathing slowly as he tried to recover from the trial. His body hurt everywhere, ribs aching, lips swollen, skin still stinging from the electric rod. But inside, he felt a different fire burning. He had not given them what they wanted, and that alone gave him strength. Hours passed before the heavy door slid open. A group of guards entered, their weapons glowing faintly. They grabbed his arms and pulled him to his feet, dragging him out again. This time, they did not take him to the same chamber. They led him through winding halls until they reached a different space, brighter, larger, filled with more onlookers. The noblewoman was waiting, sitting on a raised platform with a calm but watchful expression. Her silver robe shimmered in the light, and her violet eyes locked onto him the moment he entered. Around her, other nobles leaned forward in anticipation, their eyes glittering with curiosity. The guards forced him to the center of the room, chaining his wrists to two metal poles so he stood exposed before everyone. The noblewoman spoke, her voice soft yet commanding. You resisted pain. You refused humiliation. But resistance alone cannot hide everything. Today, we will see what truth your body cannot conceal. The crowd murmured with excitement. Strange devices hovered in the air, glowing with alien energy, their purpose unknown to him. One of the nobles, with thin arms and a sharp face, stepped forward carrying a sphere that pulsed with light. He pressed it against the human's chest, and instantly, heat spread across his body. His heart raced without control, his breathing quickened. The sphere was designed to force a reaction, to push his body to its limit. At first, he clenched his jaw and tried to resist, but the sensation was overwhelming. His muscles tightened, sweat rolled down his skin, and his pulse thundered like a drum. The crowd leaned closer, watching every movement, waiting for something unusual to appear. Whispers filled the hall again. The worm will reveal itself. The human cannot hide it now. The noblewoman's eyes narrowed with focus. She was not laughing like the others. Her gaze was sharp, as though she wanted to see something beyond the surface. The sphere's light grew brighter, and the human felt his body betray him. His chest rose and fell rapidly. His veins stood out, his face flushed with heat. The crowd gasped. They had expected weakness, collapse, or begging. Instead, they saw a transformation. His body did not break. It adapted. His breathing steadied. His posture remained straight, and the fire that spread through him only seemed to sharpen his presence. The rumor of the creature had been twisted in their culture, but what they witnessed was something different: human resilience forced into the open. One of the nobles whispered in shock, "It grows. Not a worm, but his strength. His body resists, yet it rises." The human lifted his head, his eyes meeting theirs with fierce defiance. He did not understand the device fully, but he understood what they were seeing. They expected shame and weakness, but instead they witnessed how a human could change under pressure. His body was not fragile, it was alive, adaptable, and capable of enduring what their kind could not. The noblewoman leaned forward, her lips parting slightly as if she too was caught off guard. For a heartbeat, her face revealed fascination, even awe, before she hid it again behind calm control. "Strange," she murmured, loud enough for all to hear. "What we thought was a tale may hold truth. The human body, it grows stronger when pressed. His energy rises instead of falling." The guards exchanged uneasy glances. The mocking laughter that once filled the chamber was gone. Now there was only silence mixed with confusion. What they had believed about humans no longer matched what stood before them. The sphere was removed, and the human's body trembled with exhaustion, but he kept standing. Chains rattled as his arms pulled against the poles, but he did not fall. Sweat dripped down his face, yet his eyes remained sharp and unbroken. That sight unsettled many in the crowd. The thin noble who had held the sphere shook his head. "Impossible," he muttered. "He should be unconscious by now. No creature can withstand that energy." But the human smiled faintly through his exhaustion. "Maybe no creature can," he said hoarsely. "But I am not one of your creatures. I am human." The chamber erupted in noise. Some nobles shouted in anger, others whispered in fear, and a few sat back in silence, their eyes wide. The noblewoman raised her hand, and once again the voices died instantly. She stood and walked down from her platform, her robe brushing the floor like liquid silver. She stopped right in front of him, so close that he could see the glow in her eyes clearly. "You defy pain, you defy humiliation, and now even your body refuses to obey weakness," she said slowly, each word carrying weight. "Perhaps you are not so simple as we believed." Her tone was no longer mocking. It carried something heavier, respect mixed with curiosity. She turned to the others. "He will not be treated as an animal. His trials continue, but he belongs to my house alone. None will touch him without my command." The chamber filled with uneasy murmurs. The serpent noble, the one who had shocked him before, hissed in anger but said nothing under her gaze. The guards looked uncertain, but they obeyed. The chains were unlocked, and the human staggered but did not fall. His chest heaved, but he forced himself to stand tall. As the guards pulled him away, his eyes lingered on the noblewoman. She had begun this by mocking him, demanding he reveal a worm. But now, he could see something had shifted. She no longer looked at him as a toy or a specimen. She looked at him as something dangerous, something powerful that even she did not fully understand. As the doors closed behind him, he felt the weight of what had just happened. He had not only survived, he had planted fear and curiosity in the hearts of his captors. The trials would continue, but now the balance had started to shift. They wanted a show of weakness, but he had given them a glimpse of strength, and that glimpse was enough to change everything. The next day came with a different kind of tension. The human was taken again from his cell, but this time the guards did not shove or strike him. They walked in silence, as if they too were unsure what to think after what they had seen. His body still ached from the last trial, but his spirit was unbroken. His head was high, his eyes sharp, and every step he took echoed louder than the clank of his chains. When the doors opened, he was led into a grander hall than before. The ceiling rose high above, lined with glowing symbols that pulsed like living veins. Tier upon tier of nobles filled the balconies, their robes heavy with jewels and metals. Murmurs swept across the chamber as soon as the human entered. Some whispered with doubt, others with anger, but all eyes locked onto him. At the center stood the noblewoman, silver-skinned and radiant in her flowing robe. She raised her hand, and the crowd silenced at once. "Bring him forward," she commanded. The guards obeyed, leading him to a circular platform where he stood under the weight of 100 stairs. The noblewoman's voice carried across the hall, calm yet filled with force. "Yesterday, this human resisted pain and endured the sphere of truth. He did not break, and his body showed strength none expected. Today, he faces judgment not only of flesh, but of will. Let the council see for themselves what kind of creature stands before us. A tall noble with golden scales rose from his seat. His voice was cold as he spoke. He is still just an animal. Tricks of endurance do not change his nature. If he has any worth, let him prove it with words, not silence. Another alien, with pale blue skin and 4 glittering eyes, leaned forward. Yes, let him explain. Let him tell us what humans are. If he fails, we will know his strength is only accident. The noblewoman turned to the human. You hear them. Speak. Tell us what you are and why you stand unbroken. Convince us if you can. The hall grew silent. Every gaze pressed against him, waiting to hear weakness in his voice, waiting to see him falter. He felt the weight of it, but he also knew this was his chance. He took a slow breath. You see me as weak, he began, his voice steady but rough from pain. You see fragile bones, soft skin, a body that bleeds easily. But what you do not see is why we survive. Humans are not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most armored. Yet we endure, we adapt, we rise after every fall. A ripple went through the crowd. Some frowned, others shifted uneasily. He continued, his eyes moving from noble to noble. You shock me with rods, you burn me with energy, and you expect me to fall. But instead, I change. I learn how to endure more. That is what it means to be human. We take pain, fear, hunger, and we turn them into strength. We are not animals for your amusement. We are survivors. The golden-scaled noble scoffed, his tail striking the floor. Survivors? Empty words. Survival is instinct, nothing more. The human turned his gaze on him. Then why are you afraid of me? Why do you gather in crowds to see me break? If I was truly nothing, you would not need this show. You doubt because you feel the truth. Humans are not what you believed. That struck the hall like a blade. Whispers broke out again, louder this time. Some nobles shouted angrily, but others grew quiet, thoughtful. The noblewoman studied him closely, her violet eyes fixed on his face. For the first time, she spoke not as if mocking, but as if she was testing something within herself. If your words are true, then prove them not with suffering, but with mind. If humans are so adaptable, can you turn fear into power even when surrounded by enemies? She stepped down from her platform and circled him slowly. You stand here alone, outnumbered, in chains. You should tremble, yet you do not. Why? The human's voice grew stronger as he replied, because fear belongs to you, not me. You fear that what you believe about humans is wrong. I stand calm because I know who I am. Nothing you do changes that. Gasps filled the chamber. His words were simple, but they cut deeper than any weapon. He had turned their trap into his stage, their insults into his shield. The blue-skinned noble with 4 eyes leaned back, his voice softer now. Perhaps his kind is not weak. Perhaps what we call weakness is only difference. But the golden-scaled noble slammed his fist down. No, he plays with words. Tomorrow, we test him again. Not with rods, not with talk, but with a trial of strength. The chamber buzzed with approval at the thought of another trial. Yet, even as the nobles argued, the human noticed the silver-skinned noblewoman watching him in silence. Her eyes no longer looked at him as prey, but as something she could not easily define. Respect lingered there, hidden beneath her calm mask. As the guards took him away, the whispers followed him once more, but this time they were not all filled with mockery. Some voices carried doubt, others even admiration. He had not only endured, he had spoken with strength, and his words had shaken the certainty of many. Walking back to the cell, he felt the ache of his wounds, but he also felt something new. His silence had been powerful, but his voice had been sharper. The trials were meant to break him, but each one gave him another chance to show what it meant to be human. He knew the hardest test was still coming, but now he had planted seeds in their minds, seeds of doubt, seeds of respect. And as long as those seeds grew, he would never be just their prisoner. He would be the human who refused to break, the man who turned their curiosity into fear and their mockery into something close to respect. The cell door opened with a hiss, and the guards stepped inside with unusual silence. Their grip was firm as they pulled the human out once again, but he noticed something different this time. They did not sneer or mock him like before. Their eyes avoided his, as though some part of them no longer believed he was as weak as the others claimed. Still, they dragged him through the corridors, deeper into the stronghold, until he reached a vast chamber unlike any he had seen before. The chamber was alive with sound. Hundreds of aliens had gathered, their voices buzzing like a storm. The floor was made of dark stone, etched with glowing lines, and in the center stood a circular arena surrounded by high walls. At the top of the walls, nobles leaned forward from their seats, eager to watch what was about to happen. Floating orbs hovered above, casting harsh light down onto the arena. The silver-skinned noblewoman stood on a balcony above, her violet eyes following him as he was shoved inside. Her robe shimmered in the light, and though her face was calm, there was something sharp in her gaze. She raised her hand, and the noise of the crowd fell into silence. Her voice rang out, clear and commanding. This human has spoken with pride. He has claimed strength beyond what we believed. Today, he will prove his words in a trial of survival. He will face an opponent chosen by our council. If he stands, perhaps his species is more than we thought. If he falls, the truth will be clear. The crowd cheered wildly. The human clenched his fists. His body was still aching from past trials, but his spirit burned hotter than ever. He knew this was not just about his survival. It was about proving that humans could not be broken. A heavy gate opened across the arena. From the shadows emerged a massive alien warrior, taller than two men, its skin covered in thick scales that shone like steel. Its eyes glowed red, and in its hands it carried a long, curved blade. The crowd roared as the warrior stepped forward, slamming the weapon against the ground with a sound that shook the floor. The human's breath came slow and steady. He had no weapon, no armor, only his body, his mind, and the fire inside him. The guards unchained his wrists and pushed him forward. The gate closed behind him, leaving no escape. The warrior charged, swinging its blade in a wide arc. The human ducked, the blade cutting the air above his head. He rolled across the floor and jumped back to his feet. The crowd gasped. He was faster than they expected. The warrior roared, swinging again, but the human sidestepped, letting the heavy weapon crash into the stone. Dust flew up, and cracks spread across the floor. He knew he could not match the warrior's strength. One blow from that blade would end him. But strength was not his only weapon. Humans had always survived not because they were the strongest, but because they were clever, quick, and determined. The warrior attacked again and again, each strike forcing the human to move, to dodge, to stay one step ahead. Sweat rolled down his skin, his lungs burned, but his focus never broke. He began to see patterns in the warrior's attacks, the way its weight slowed it down, the way its blade always struck with predictable force. Finally, the moment came. The warrior swung wide, leaving its chest open for a second. The human lunged forward, driving his shoulder into the creature's body with all his strength. The warrior stumbled, unbalanced, crashing into the wall with a thunderous sound. The crowd erupted in shock. The human did not waste time. He grabbed a shard of stone broken from the floor and held it like a dagger. His eyes locked on the warrior as it pushed itself up, fury burning in its red gaze. The noblewoman leaned forward, her violet eyes glittering with something like fascination. The warrior charged again, but this time the human did not run. He waited, his muscles tense, his heart pounding. At the last second, he slipped aside and slashed the shard across the warrior's exposed leg. The alien roared in pain, stumbling again. Blood dark as tar spilled onto the floor. The crowd gasped louder. They had not expected this fragile human to wound their champion. Some shouted in anger, others in disbelief, but no one looked away. The warrior swung wildly now, its fury making it careless. The human dodged again and again, each time striking small blows with his stone shard, cutting, weakening, making the giant slower with every wound. At last, the warrior fell to one knee, its blade slipping from its hand. The human stood over it, chest heaving, sweat and blood covering his body. He could end it now, strike the final blow, but instead he dropped the shard and stepped back. His voice, rough but strong, carried through the arena. "You wanted to see the truth of humans," he said. "Here it is. We fight with nothing, yet we survive. We fight with weakness, yet we find strength. We are not fragile, we are unbroken." The arena fell into silence. The nobles stared in shock. The warrior, defeated and bleeding, did not rise. The human stood tall, his body trembling with exhaustion, but his spirit burning brighter than ever. On the balcony, the noblewoman's lips curved into the faintest smile. She raised her hand, and her voice rang out across the chamber. "Enough. The trial is complete. This human has proven himself. The crowd exploded with noise, some cheering, others shouting in anger, but none denying what they had seen. The human had done what no one believed possible. He had stood against their warrior and endured. As the guards led him out of the arena, he felt every eye still on him. Some filled with hate, others with respect, and one pair, violet, sharp, and unreadable, watched him more closely than all the rest. He knew this was not the end. The trials would continue, but now the game had changed. He was no longer just a prisoner. He was a challenge to everything they believed. The night after the trial, the human sat in his cell, his body sore and covered with bruises. Every muscle ached from the fight, but his spirit was stronger than ever. He could still hear the noise of the crowd in his mind, their gasps when he had wounded the warrior, their silence when he refused to strike the killing blow. He had turned their arena into proof that humans were not weak toys to be mocked. Even in chains, he felt proud. When the door slid open again, he expected more guards. Instead, only one figure entered. It was the silver-skinned noblewoman, her violet eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. She carried no weapon, no guards by her side. Her robe shimmered softly as she stepped into the cell, and the door sealed shut behind her. For a long moment, she said nothing. She only studied him where he sat, breathing hard but holding her gaze. Finally, her lips curved into a small smile. "You confuse my people," she said softly. "They came to laugh at you, but instead they whisper in doubt. Some call you dangerous, others call you strong." The human tilted his head slightly. "And you? What do you call me?" Her eyes narrowed as if weighing her own answer. "Defiant," she said. "And defiance is rare here. Most creatures kneel when ordered, but you refuse, again and again. Even when broken, you remain whole. That makes you different." He gave a small, tired smile. "Maybe that's just what it means to be human." Her curiosity deepened. She stepped closer, her voice low. "Explain it then. What makes your kind rise when beaten? Why do you stand when logic says you should fall?" He thought for a moment, then spoke slowly. "Because we have no choice. We are fragile compared to many species, yes. But that fragility taught us to endure storms, hunger, sickness, and war. We adapt. We find ways to survive. We don't break because we can't afford to. If we break, we die. If we endure, we live." Her eyes glowed brighter, fascination flickering across her face. She circled him slowly, her step silent. "Your strength is not in bone or muscle," she said. "It is in will, a strange kind of power, one my people do not understand." The human raised his chin. "Then maybe it's time you learned." A silence stretched between them, heavy but not hostile. She studied his wounds, the cuts and bruises that should have left him collapsed, yet he still sat tall, still defiant. For the first time, she seemed to see him not as a specimen, but as something equal. When she finally spoke again, her voice carried across the room like a blade cutting through air. "Tomorrow, the council will decide your fate. Many demand your death. They fear you will spread your defiance to others. They fear humans may not be so weak after all." His jaw tightened. "And you? Do you fear me?" Her lips curved slightly. "I fear what you might awaken, but fear is not always weakness. Sometimes, fear is respect." She turned to leave, but before stepping out, she looked back at him one last time. "Prepare yourself, human. Tomorrow you may face your final trial, and if you survive, nothing will be the same." Then the door closed, and he was alone once more. The next day came quickly. The guards returned, dragging him through corridors to the great chamber once more. But this time, the air felt different. The nobles were restless, their voices sharp, their expressions tense. Some looked at him with hatred, others with curiosity, but none with the same mocking smiles he had seen before. The noblewoman stood in the center, her presence commanding as ever. She raised her hand, and the chamber fell silent. "This human has endured trials of pain, of body, and of will," she declared. "He has shown strength where we expected weakness. He has shown restraint where we expected blood. The question remains, what shall we do with him?" The golden-scaled noble rose, his voice filled with fury. "Kill him! He is a danger to our order. If humans are like him, then their defiance will spread like fire. End it now before it grows." The blue-skinned noble with 4 eyes shook his head. "No, kill him, and we admit we feared him. Already, whispers spread through the people. If we destroy him, he will become a legend. If we keep him, perhaps we learn what humans truly are." The chamber erupted in argument. Voices clashed, demands rose, and the tension thickened like a storm. In the middle of it all, the human stood quietly, listening. He realized then that his presence had already changed them. They no longer saw him as a toy. He had become a question they could not answer, a threat they could not ignore. Finally, the noblewoman raised her hand again, and silence returned. She looked at the human, her violet eyes sharp. "Speak, human. Tell us, if we let you live, why should we? What makes your life worth keeping?" The hall fell still. Every eye turned to him, waiting for his words. His voice was calm, steady, carrying to every corner. "Because I am proof that humans are not weak, not broken. Kill me, and you silence only one man. But let me live, and you will see the truth. My people endure because we are stronger than fear, stronger than pain, stronger than chains. We may bleed, but we never bow." The nobles murmured again, shaken by the force in his words. Some frowned in anger, others leaned forward with respect. The noblewoman studied him for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice calm but heavy. "Perhaps the council will never agree. Perhaps your fate cannot be decided by them. Instead, it will be decided by the trials yet to come. For now, you live. For now, you remain under my command." The guards pulled him back, and the crowd erupted once more. Yet, as he was led away, he saw her eyes following him. In them was no longer just curiosity. There was respect. And behind that respect, something even more dangerous, admiration. He knew his journey was far from over. The trials had not broken him. Instead, they had given him something greater, a voice that even his captors could not ignore. And in that moment, he realized the truth. His strength was no longer only his own. It was a shadow stretching over the entire chamber, a reminder that humans were not fragile, not weak, but something far more powerful than his captors had ever imagined. The chamber was brighter than ever before, its tall walls glowing with strange runes, as if the very stone pulsed with life. Hundreds of aliens had gathered, their voices a storm of noise. Some called for the human's death, others demanded to see more trials, but all eyes carried a new weight. No one looked at him with the same mocking laughter they once had. The guards pushed him forward onto the center platform, but this time their grip was hesitant. Even they knew something had changed. The silver-skinned noblewoman rose from her throne, her violet eyes gleaming in the light. She lifted her hand, and the entire chamber fell silent. Her robe shimmered as she stepped closer, every movement echoing authority. "Today," she announced, "we decide the fate of the human. He has faced pain, strength, and will. He has endured every trial. The council has debated, but no agreement has been reached. So now, his fate will be sealed not by chains or blades, but by his own stand before us." The golden-scaled noble stood, fury burning in his voice. "This is madness. He is dangerous. He has already turned whispers into doubt. If we let him live, our people will see weakness in us. End him here now, and be done with it." But the blue-skinned noble with 4 eyes rose in answer. "No. If we kill him, he becomes a martyr. Already, he has planted seeds of respect. His strength cannot be denied. To destroy him would admit our fear." The chamber filled with arguments once again. Voices clashed like thunder. The human stood quietly in the center, his chest rising and falling, his wounds still raw, but his eyes burning with defiance. He realized they had given him something without knowing it: power. Not the power of chains or weapons, but the power of presence. They were no longer united. His survival alone had divided them. The noblewoman turned to him. "Human," she said, her voice sharp, "you will speak once more, before this council, before the eyes of my people. Give them reason to see you not as a beast, but as something more. Or give them reason to fear you so greatly they dare not strike you down. Your words will decide." The hall went still. Every alien leaned forward. Every gaze weighed on him like stone. He took a deep breath and raised his voice, steady and strong. "You have chained me, beaten me, tested me. You called me weak. Yet here I stand. You tried to break me with pain, but I endured. You tried to shame me with trials, but I refused to bow. You brought me before your warriors, and I still live. What does that tell you? That I am weak? No. It tells you that humans are not what you believed." The chamber murmured, but he did not stop. His voice grew louder. "You think strength is in armor, in weapons, in size, but true strength is in will. My body bleeds, but I still rise. My bones ache, but I still stand. You cannot understand this because you have never needed to. But humans survive because we must. We turn pain into fire, fear into courage, and defeat into defiance. That is what makes us strong. Gasps spread through the chamber. Some nobles shouted in anger, but others fell into silence, their expressions shaken. The noblewoman's violet eyes glowed brighter, fixed on him with something fierce, something like pride. The golden-scaled noble slammed his fist down. Lies! He only speaks with clever tongue. His species cannot be trusted. He stepped down into the arena, his body towering as he drew a long spear glowing with energy. If he wishes to prove himself, then let him prove it now, against me. The hall erupted. Some shouted for blood, others for restraint. But before anyone could stop him, the golden-scaled noble lunged at the human with deadly force. The human's body screamed with pain, exhaustion pulling at him. But his mind sharpened. He sidestepped at the last instant, the spear slicing the air where he had stood. The crowd gasped. The golden noble attacked again and again, each strike heavy and furious. The human dodged, rolled, and twisted, his body burning but his spirit unyielding. At last, when the spear came down in a wide arc, the human seized the moment. He grabbed the shaft, forcing it aside with every ounce of his strength, and drove his elbow into the noble's throat. The scaled giant staggered back, choking in shock. The chamber roared with disbelief. The human stood tall, breathing hard, his fists clenched, but his stance unbroken. "You wanted proof?" he shouted. "Here it is. You call me fragile, yet your strongest cannot bring me down. I am human, and I will not bow to you or anyone." The golden-scaled noble collapsed to one knee, clutching his throat, fury in his eyes, but no strength left to rise. The crowd was stunned into silence. The silver-skinned noblewoman stepped forward, her voice ringing across the hall. "Enough. The trial is finished. He has shown more strength than you dared believe, and I declare before this council, he is under my protection. Any who strike him now, strike against me." The chamber erupted once more, but this time the noise was different. No longer simple mockery, no longer only hate. There was awe, there was doubt, and there was respect. The human had changed the air itself. The guards moved to lead him away, but for the first time, they did so gently, not with shoves or jeers. As he walked out, the whispers followed him, no longer filled only with cruelty. His defiance had become legend before their eyes. And when he glanced back one last time, he saw her. Violet eyes burning, lips curved with a faint, secret smile. What had begun as curiosity and command had turned into something far more dangerous. The noblewoman had not only claimed him, she had declared him worthy. The human's trials were over, but his story was only beginning. He had walked into their hall as a prisoner, and he left as a force they could no longer ignore.